Welcome everyone to our CyberWise chat today. We're going to talk about what the heck is the metaverse and should you let your children go there. I'm Diana Graber. I'm author of Raising Humans in a Digital World and founder of CyberWise and CyberCivics. Here, as always, with Dr. Pamela Rutledge, who's the director of the Media Psychology Research Center. And we're really excited to welcome our special guest, Sean Herman. If you don't know about Sean, he is the founder of Kinzu, which he's going to tell you about in a moment. And he's the author of a great book at the Amazon bestselling book, Screen Captured. Every day, Sean challenges the way we think about screen time and asks how differently we would feel if we could give our children only the best of what technology has to offer. I really love that. I love reading that. So before we get started, Sean, can you just take a moment and tell us what Kinzu is?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks very much for having me. So yeah, I think Kinzu, the summary you gave is really what we're trying to do. I founded Kinzu in 2018 and basically just recognized I wanted technology to be a more positive force in my own household. So I had a 7-year-old girl mucking about with technology, and I was asking myself constantly, like, why do I feel this anxiety when she's on the screen? So I kind of set out to solve that problem, and really what we're trying to do is build products that kids will love, but parents can trust. We have a messenger called Kinzu Messenger out on the market. We've got a video calling app called Together, and then we have a third app that's going to be launching sometime in Q1 or Q2 of this year.
Awesome. Well, I know you're very busy, so thank you for giving us this half hour of your time. Okay, so we are going to talk about metaverse, as I mentioned. It's a term we've probably heard a lot lately, especially since Facebook kind of co-opted the name Meta in a nod to what's happening out there that we're going to talk about. But the most important thing is we're going to talk about what the metaverse might mean for children. And one thing that the three of us discovered during our pre-chat chat is that everyone sort of has a different idea of what the metaverse might look like. So we're each going to take a moment today at the top to describe what we think the metaverse is. So I'll jump in super quickly. First of all, it's not a Facebook thing. I think that's important to say. When I think of the metaverse, my mind goes to Ready Player One, the movie or the book, and also the movie Avatar, being in this immersive virtual world where people live, work, shop, interact, possibly through avatars. We'll talk about that. But I think the idea is you're going to feel like you're inside the action in real time. So that's my 3-second description. So Pam, what do you think the metaverse is going to be?
I guess the first thing I want to say to parents is that Zuckerberg's announcement really raised the anxiety level of parents as if he was introducing something really new and scary. So it was a very successful branding campaign in changing Facebook to Meta platforms, focusing on the creation of the metaverse. But as Diana says, the metaverse is really a description of an experience, not a product. And Facebook doesn't own it, no matter what you may think. But it brings back some really bad stereotypical images when you're worried about your kids using technology. But I would say, Diana, that I actually agree with you that the simple explanation is that the metaverse describes shared virtual worlds that combine aspects of what we already know from digital experience, social media, gaming, avatars, and the like, with a sort of broader, more fluid environment that will have functioning economies. And whether it's augmented reality or virtual reality, it's an immersive experience that moves across different aspects of our lives.
Right. And Sean, do you have kind of a different idea of it? I know you're not entirely as pumped about it as I thought you would be before we spoke. What do you think about this metaverse?
Yeah, totally. I think that it's real. I don't believe the metaverse is going to be Mark Zuckerberg's vision of it, or at least how it's been presented thus far. Yeah, I mean, the way I think about the metaverse is, for the past 15 years since the iPhone came out, we've been interacting with the online world basically through a phone screen. And I think what the metaverse is really going to be is new ways of interacting between hardware and software. So I think we are going to see, I'm more bullish on augmented reality than I am virtual reality with the headsets and things like that. But yes, I think it's going to be elements of everything you've described. I don't think it's going to be exactly what Mark Zuckerberg has presented. And even though it's talked about like it's a place or a destination, I don't think it exists today. I think there's elements of it everywhere, but it's still very early stages.
Yeah. And before we move forward, because I know I get asked this a lot, the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality. Sean, you want to grab that question?
Sure. So augmented reality is marrying kind of the real world with hardware. So that's going to be looking at things through your phone. Pokemon Go is probably the most well-known example of that, where you have these Pokemon characters kind of interacting in the real world. It's basically overlaying technology, and all the big companies have patents on producing glasses that are going to do the same thing. VR requires the big headset. That's usually what we think about when we're pondering this, is people putting on the headsets, entering a virtual world, and that sort of thing. So that would be the primary difference between the two, is a big piece of hardware with VR, where AR is going to be a little more fluid and just kind of build off things we use every day.
Yeah. And it's interesting with VR, Facebook has made a big investment in that with the Oculus headset. They're pouring a lot of money into that. So I think they really think these headsets are going to take off. I question that. I know, Pam, we've talked a little bit about that. What do you think about kids in these headsets?
Well, first of all, I think, people are worried because any kind of immersive experience is very effective and persuasive. So people worry about the level of manipulation and persuasion. And in virtual reality, that can be very high. And one of the reasons is that this virtual immersion has a profound impact on how we process and internalize information. So it can shift the way we rely on different sensory input. So it affects balance. And while adults may be able to handle that, kids kids may not be able to. The research is not complete. There is not much of it. But what we do know is that their brains react to VR much differently than adults. So these growing brains, you need to be very cautious. And even though the Meta headset Oculus, even though they say not for 13 and under, that enforcement has to happen in the home. It isn't going to happen in your Amazon shopping cart. So you really have to be aware of these liabilities. Now, to be fair, I want to just say VR has been a very powerful tool clinically, using with PTSD and phobias and training and changing attitudes about things like climate change and racism. So it isn't like VR itself is bad. VR is a tool. Tools are neither good or bad. It's how they're used that matters. And that's what we're worried about here with kids, is how these environments are built and how these tools are used.
And we do have a question here. How would you define platforms like Second Life, AR, VR, other? How would you define Second Life? And for those of you who don't know Second Life, it's been around for a while. It never really took off. But Sean, would you describe that as AR or VR?
I have to be honest and say I don't know enough about it.
Yeah. See, that shows you it never took off. I know about it because when I was in my master's program with Pam, being my instructor, one of the other teachers was always trying to encourage us to use Second Life to do the lessons or whatever. And none of us liked it. It was very odd. So
it was odd. But it's not AR.
Reality, correct?
But it's not AR, because AR is where you're overlaying digital items on your reality. And if you haven't played Pokemon Go, do you have a heads-up display in your car? Do you watch football? Have you seen the yellow down lines? Those are all augmented reality, where someone has added something to what your visual reality is. Second Life is a form of VR in the sense that it creates a virtual world. It isn't immersive in the way that on a headset would make it, where you feel like you're actually in the world, but it psychologically can become that way if you project and your imagination is engaged, so that it starts to feel real.
Yeah, and I think the key there is that it's an immersive environment that you interact through an avatar. And that's really different from VR, because especially a lot of these games that kids play, they're not wearing headsets a lot of times, but they're interacting through an avatar that represents them, which is playful and fun. But I think that's where we need to educate parents, because I know from teaching CyberCivics, a lot of times when kids interact in something that's like an avatar, they think it's not them. And so they're able to do and say things they would never do in real life. And that's where we need to educate our children, that behind every avatar is a real person with real feelings, and their feelings can be hurt, and and so that, I think, is the disconnect here. When kids start using their virtual selves, maybe that accountability piece goes away. Would you guys
Well,
agree?
and Diana, there's research that suggests that there isn't that discrete boundary. And so while it may encourage kinds of behaviors that they wouldn't do offline because they haven't taken cybercivics, it actually, it sort of becomes a normalization. So it becomes a little bit of their identities, because there's been research done where they have people be superheroes and help people out. And that in fact improved their self-esteem, so that there is a bleed over of using an avatar and the choices that you make in an avatar about how you think about yourself and how you behave.
Right. So do you guys think, are we there? Are we getting there? Like, where are we on the spectrum of attaining what people call the metaverse? Sean, what do you think? Are we there? Are we getting there? We're close?
No, I don't think we're particularly close. I think that it's very early. I think there's elements of it, but the simple fact that at large we can't even get to a definition of what the metaverse is kind of says it's early. I think there are elements between things like Roblox. We've had Pokemon Go. There's a lot of avatar-based experiences. There's full-on VR. Somewhere, in there, I think there's going to be elements of it. There was a tech evangelist, his name is Sean Puri, and he defined the metaverse in a way I really liked. He doesn't define it as an actual thing. He defines it as a moment in time when our online personas become more important than our offline personas. And it's a really cool way of thinking of it. And I think that that is kind of bleeds into some of the things that you were talking about early, and as it relates to children and making sure their avatar online persona doesn't become more important than real life. And that's an interesting thing. So all in all, I think we are very early. I think there's elements out there. I don't know that the metaverse is a destination that it's going to be built and then it's there. I think we're a long way off.
Yeah, I have a message in the chat box from John Walber offering to give us a tour someday, and I wonder what you're giving tours of. Is it Second Life? But if you could put that in the chat box, that would be awesome, because I would be interested. All right, so let's kind of pivot here a little bit and talk about what this all means to kids. What I think is really interesting is kids kind of have their dabbling versions of the metaverse. Roblox is always offered up as a really great example. And I'm surprised, because I work with so many parents, how many parents have kids on Roblox who have never looked at it themselves. And that's where I would start, is if your kids are playing any of these quasi immersive environment games like Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite, look at them and ask what they're doing. It's pretty interesting. And I think for these kids, a lot of them feel like they're part of the action. They can contribute to the creativity, and they're interacting with their friends. That's the number one thing. And I think what's happened during the pandemic with the lack of the social interaction is they're really turning to these immersive environments to make friends and to do fun things and to do things that they can't do in the real world right now. So
yeah, a perfect example of that, Diana, is what Fortnite did with their Rift tour with a concert by Ariana Grande, where it was entirely avatars, but you could attend. They had 27 million people attending, but those are people that couldn't go out. So it was a way of attending a conference or a concert, but it also gave people who would never be able to attend an Ariana Grande concert a chance to be part of that crowd and participate. So, I worry a little bit about that definition, Sean, because it's so pejorative. It's someplace where our online becomes more important than our offline. And I don't think that's necessarily a given. I think that it is, whether the online becomes more fluid or we become more authentic across both, I don't know. But I think that just assuming that that's going to be more important sort of negates the fundamental psychology of humans, which is that we are social beings and we will connect in the best way possible. During the pandemic, the best way possible is virtual. When the pandemic is, behind us, at least functionally, people will choose to be physically together again. So I'm not worried about that loss of fantasy to reality line that sort of implies. But I do think it's important, as you were suggesting, to educate people to know, so they know what to watch for, so that they know when they're maybe overinvested in an avatar or overinvested in screen time.
And I want to kind of go back to, Sean, to the Roblox or Minecraft. I know you know about those games because you have young ones and you
Yes.
work with a lot of families that have young ones. Can you describe what it is about it that is kind of the stepping stone to this metaverse that we keep hearing about?
Yeah, I think what draws at least my daughter into Minecraft, Roblox is fundamentally connecting with friends. I think that I'll hone in on Roblox, for example. I think Roblox has a lot to offer, and I've always tried to lean in on it with my daughter. It, like most technology, it's got a wide range of outcomes, and I think it really depends on, you have to prepare them, you have to stay active, you have to lean into it with your kids. But basically, the way my daughter uses Roblox is hang out with friends. It is in a virtual world. It's through avatars. They're completing levels together, which involves some problem solving. But a lot of the time, they're just kind of hanging out and chatting. But over the years, you can connect with strangers. You can do all these different things, and that kind of relies on me as a parent. But I think similar to the metaverse is if your child is showing interest and wants to learn more about it, it's a great thing to lean in with them. Have your child educate you as much as they can. I think our children are a very untapped resource when it comes to learning about tech. And yeah, so I think that Roblox is interactive worlds. Children are exploring. There's avatars. There's meeting up with friends. There's now getting into Fortnite and virtual concerts. I think a lot of the elements are already there of what the best of the metaverse is kind of described.
Right. And one thing I will say about these games, and I hear this all the time from the students I teach, because they're like, I put this one thing off, it got blocked, and I can't do this and I can't do that. Like, I feel like they're very aggressive, isn't the right word, but I think they're very diligent as far as moderation goes, which I really tip my hat off to them, because I hope that will be the model that other companies will follow. So if you're not familiar with that, I know specifically, I was reading about Roblox, 4,000 human moderators, awesome. In addition to algorithms that scan and review content, they filter content by age. Even despite all of that oversight, I caught this online. Craig Donato, Chief Business Officer at Roblox, said, one of the challenges of developing a metaverse is creating rules in order to prevent it from being a Wild West. Moderation is a challenge for any internet community, and Roblox is not immune. The problem can be accentuated on the platform when players have been subjected to graphic violence or sex in experiences, since it is heavily marketed to children. So even an environment that does such a great job of moderating and watching for content, stuff will slip through. And that's what I talk to families about all the time. Do it with your kids, see what they're seeing. For the very youngest of children, they are not ready for this stuff. So do you think other companies follow suit?
I just wanted to add to that there's another behavior or another thing that's happening on even Roblox, who I agree with you, I think does as good a job as is humanly possible, because it's an impossible task, but there is a commercial exchange. And so there's a lot of, I hear with my 11-year-old, first of all, she FaceTimes with friends while she plays Roblox on computers. So it's definitely social, but there's a lot of negotiating. I'm going to sell you my rare unicorn for X amount of Roblox. And, she saves her allowance so she can buy bits of things in Roblox. And so essentially what it's showing is that these kids are going to grow up. Maybe they won't have any trouble understanding Bitcoin and blockchain like I do, but they are understanding what we would consider real money for virtual goods. And that can be very exciting. It can be very compelling when a kid starts to think that they aren't going to have a good time on the game if they don't have more Robux. So I think parents need to be aware of that commercial side. It isn't just bucks you earn in the game. You can translate, art, real dollars. I hate to, I'm not sure that virtual isn't real, but you can translate, currency of the realm into Robux, and kids do, and they buy all kinds of things. It's a huge economic thing, which is why Roblox has gotten investors for this next level of engagement.
Yeah, and you know what? This is such an important topic. I'm glad that you took us there, Pam, to monetization, because what I see and hear a lot with kids that are not developmentally prepared to be on these sites is sometimes they'll buy things to try to curry favor with certain friends, and they're giving away things that they really shouldn't be giving away because they just don't understand that whole monetary thing, and it's a way for them to have sort of value in the game. So I think that really underscores why we've got to wait for kids to be a certain age to start playing this, interacting with others, especially when there's monetization involved. I know we talked a little bit about that before, Sean. What's your feeling this whole monetization side of this, what's coming?
Yeah, I think that it's, as of right now, I think the commercial aspects of the metaverse are probably the ones bearing the most fruit. We see companies like Adidas, Nike, leading companies, they've really leaned in and they're off creating virtual sneakers. It makes sense. There's no R&D, there's no, testing. It doesn't take years to get a product to market. They can just make some avatars and sell them, and they are selling. So the commercial aspects are going to be very real. There are many companies that are selling virtual real estate in the metaverse, even though the metaverse doesn't exist exactly. So there are a lot, and definitely with kids, there are going to be they're going to be wanting probably to kind of get in on that, and that's where I think a few things I worry about the metaverse. So living through avatars, there are risks. I think we've seen it already with things like Instagram. It becomes very easy to project and put our best selves forward and curate the experience. I think potentially metaverse and avatars can take that to the next level. You combine that with the commercialization, and you have something that could be very tricky when it comes to kids.
Yeah, it's all about developmental stages, I think, and education, which, I'm very hot on. So
Mhm.
I just, to throw it out there in the CyberCivics curriculum, I feel like, we were kind of ahead of the moment, because we have a lot of lessons in there that prepare kids for this virtual world. We have a couple avatar lessons that we teach in 6th grade to teach kids what's behind an avatar and what to think about when you're interacting with them. And then in our final level of the curriculum, one of my favorite lessons is future technologies and ethical thinking about what's coming next and who's building it, and are they thinking about the ethical implications. And I think that's so important, because the kids that are playing this stuff now that we don't even understand, they're probably going to gravitate to this next level of the internet with no problem. But we also have to remember they're the ones that are going to build the next thing, and we're not going to be there to help them. So we hope that they will take all of the stuff that I hate to say this, but some of our current technology companies, not you, Sean, but the other guys, didn't think about the implications to kids or the ethical ramifications. And I really hope that these future generations think about that ahead of time. So, okay. I always get my soapbox out, sorry.
All good.
No, soapboxes are good. Soapboxes are good. And one thing I wanted to say, Diana, because you were talking about the sort of the age appropriateness of using these technologies, and I totally agree with that. I do want to point out, though, that there is no age too young, unless they can't talk yet, to talk about technology. Kids are aware of technology. They're aware of kids in the neighborhood or siblings or whatever. So to start age appropriate conversations with them, so you don't think you're like keeping them, sheltered, because it's not possible. So start having those conversations about, what's okay or what's not okay, or how you use things, how much you should use things, all of that stuff when they're very little, so that it just becomes a growing conversation and not an argumentative one. It's very hard to start with a 12-year-old and say you're using too much of your phone, right? Very difficult. Start when they're 4 or 5, so that they have some context for the issues and your concerns.
And I think that's the one thing we've learned from the pandemic, is like we all relied on technology, and kids probably at a very young age started getting introduced to things that they normally would not have. So grateful for products like Kinzu that do it safely and responsibly. But yeah, that's the takeaway here, is kids are starting very young, but we've got to be more involved than ever and make sure that they're doing things that they're ready for. So
yeah, we have a saying that I love, which is parental involvement trumps parental control. I think as parents
in America, we try not to use that word too much, because it has different connotation.
totally, yeah, out there in Canada maybe more, but But yeah, the point being, I mean, even Instagram is talking about Instagram Kids. What they're going to do is put parental controls on it, put a wrapper on it, and say it's safe. I don't believe that to be true. So you have to look at business model. You have to look at what their motivations are, which are to keep us on the platform as long as possible, to show us more ads, and things like that. So I think I agree with the sentiment that as parents, we really need to lean in. It becomes easier to reconcile this, this feeling that our kids are going to use technology, it's going to be part of their lives, but why do we feel anxiety? And I think we require better tools. We require better education. Everyone should go out and read Diana's book, and these sort of things to really educate. And then you can start to strip away, and that's really fundamentally what we're trying to do. Is technology offers a lot of good, but conversely, it offers a lot of bad. And if we can start to strip away the bad and understand what that is, and focus on the good, then I think our children will be, better prepared for this future that's inevitable.
Absolutely. And we have one comment here that I'm going to read to us. So in addition to my kids needing to navigate brand name clothes in real life, they now need to manage the desire pressure to collect, buy things like virtual Nike sneakers. Absolutely. And kids already have that pressure in the games they're playing. I hear about it all the time. And it creates rifts between kids, the haves and have-nots. And, there's a lot of stuff that's already monetized in the games they play.
But those are the same skills, online and offline, of dealing with peer pressure, conflict resolution, how to handle bullies. And, speed ahead to my takeaway, but you don't have to play these games. You don't have to play Roblox to have a conversation with kids about good citizenship. And because your values and those that guide your sort of acceptable behaviors in the household or among people translate across, because tomorrow the metaverse, the next day, first it was Facebook, then it was Instagram, then it was TikTok, who knows tomorrow. But the values move along. So don't worry about the parental controls on a device. Worry about if your child is being taught values, citizenship, critical thinking.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in there because I'll forget if I don't say it. If you don't like the parental controls on the things your kids are doing, speak up. Let them know. Like, parents have such a voice, and I feel like we don't use it. We are the customers. Our kids' eyeballs are money. So if there's something that you don't like in a game, in a platform, anything, use your voice. You have a vote. I mean, they rely on us. So gosh, that would be my biggest takeaway for today.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So we're at the takeaway point. Sean, what's your takeaway to parents?
Oh, let's see. I have so many. I'll try to distill it. On that last point, yes, if you don't pay, you are the product. I think that's something to always keep in mind. If your kids are using free tools, they are the product. They're going to be shown ads or data sold and things like that. Yeah, when it comes to the metaverse, I think it's early. The range of outcomes of the metaverse is wide. And I think on the extreme, we see dystopia. I hope we've learned enough that we're not willing to let Mark Zuckerberg lead us into the metaverse. I don't think that they've earned the trust necessary to build this world. But it is early. I think educate yourself, lean in with your kids. You'll learn a lot and learn how to navigate it together, which I think is always the best thing to do.
I sure hope they just didn't turn off our Facebook Live.
I know.
Yeah. Any other takeaway? No. Any other takeaways, Pam?
No, I think that Sean did a great job of, I just, if you were going to summarize it in one, it's like lean in. Don't be anxious and stand back, lean in and find out, because your kids are doing this. So the more you know, the better.
Yeah. And please urge your schools to teach digital literacy. I know parents are busy, but digital literacy is today's literacy. And if your schools aren't teaching it, they should be. Have them call us. It's very, very important. Yeah. And I did want to say thank you for those of you who are here today. You probably saw I put a lot of links in the chat box. And I want to point you to two really good ones that are near the top that came, I think, early in the half hour. They're really good. They're from our friend Sean Herman and some current research. I'm sorry, not Sean Herman. They came from our friend Darren Lauer. And they're two good pieces of research on VR and children, the impact that we know so far. So you might take a look at those if you're considering any kinds of this technology for your own children. So in the chat box. All right. Any final words from either of you? Are we there?
Well, I just want to say, congratulations on the good work you're doing, Sean. And I
Excellent.
wish your products great success because they're well needed.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. I
Kudos. I
appreciate
totally
that.
agree. Yes.
And
And
right
thank you
back
both.
at you. Yeah.
Thank you both for your time today. And for those of you who joined us, this will be posted on the CyberWise chat part of the CyberWise website in the next couple of days. There's one more message. Let me see. Oh, thank you. You're very welcome. And we do this every month. So next month, we are actually going to talk about something that I'm very excited about. And it's, don't worry about Instagram or TikTok. Think about YouTube. It's the most used social media network amongst kids. And I think parents always forget about that. So there's a lot happening on YouTube. We're going to dive into that in February. And we'll be posting the date and time very soon on the CyberWise website. So thank you all. And thank you, John Walber, for your links in there as well. I hope people get to check out what he's offering. I'm going to do that as soon as we sign off. And again, Sean, thank you for your time. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.